Welcome back to 94 Feet, ladies and gentlemen. And of course, congratulations to the Denver Nuggets for winning the 2023 NBA Finals. Cade Cameron, Danny Stepanovich, as usual. Danny, it's been a while. It's been, since pretty much the beginning of this series, and it was only a 5-game series, so not too long. But of course, how you doing today?
I wish I could say I was doing better, Cade. I'm not gonna lie. I had money invested in Denver to win in 6, Denver to win in 7, Miami to win the series. The series took over 5.5 games, and all of those busted. But it's all good. Congrats to the Nuggets. Fun series as usual. I was wrong. What can I say? Cade, how you doing? Glad to be back.
It happens. Hey, I'm glad to be back as well. And, I'm chilling. I'm doing good. It's been a busy past week. I hate to say it. I haven't been able to sit down and watch too many of the games. I've only really been able to watch probably about like 12 minutes out of the entire series, which is a very low number for me. But, hey, that's okay. Other than that, everything is good. I was able to check the tapes, and I was 100% right. The Nuggets won in 5, Miami taking game 2 in Denver, being the only team this postseason to take a game in Denver. So I can't bet on the NBA, but I'm happy about that. And other than that, things have been good. Things have been chilling. But let's get into the big stuff, of course. As we mentioned, the Denver Nuggets NBA champions, first time in franchise history, first time in their first playoff appearance first NBA Finals appearance in franchise history. So big stuff for the Denver Nuggets, big stuff for this team. Jokic, Murray, Michael Malone, all these players and coaches who have worked so hard for this. And again, we both were a little bit unsure about where this team was going into the finals, but after 5 games, it shows that this team deserves to be named the top team in the NBA and the top team in general for this past season, despite the way that the Bucks played, despite the way that the Celtics played, the Heat, the other teams out well. I mean, despite how all these teams played during the regular season, the Nuggets are NBA champions.
Okay, where do you want to start?
Good question. Let's just say, let's just start with actually let's start with the losers. Let's start with the Miami Heat. We'll give Denver all their praise throughout the entirety of the show. But with this Miami Heat team, they're an 8
You
seed.
You sure I'm gonna give them praise?
Oh, you might not because you just lost a bunch of bets, but I'll give them their praise. Second 8th seed in NBA history to be able to make it to the NBA Finals. We've talked about it consistently. Spoelstra being one of the top coaches in the NBA. This team in general, we talked about it again with this team, along with Boston and Denver, as being some of the most cohesive, and even the Warriors. But at the time, they weren't one of the teams in the conference finals. But we talked about with Boston and Denver as one of the most cohesive teams in the NBA at this moment. And despite the fact that they did lose in 5, I mean, it's a team that you got to give a lot of credit to. It's a team that you've got to put a lot of respect on. Jimmy Butler going out there having a legendary postseason performance. I think the big questions come along of what do you do with some of those role players that help the team make it to the NBA Finals. Caleb Martin was a great player, but he lacked the confidence and the ability to make big plays down the stretch. Same thing with Strauss. Same thing with Gabe Vincent. It's a great. I remember correctly. We didn't see Hero tonight, even though he was ready to suit up. But just in general, I mean, this is a Miami team that has a lot to be happy about, especially because they were an 8th seed, who was, if I remember correctly, almost eliminated in the play-in tournament against Toronto. But again, they were able to overcome that. They were able to win. And in the NBA Finals, they lose in 5, but they still had a hell of a season and as the Eastern Conference champions.
Okay, I don't know if they got much to be happy about because I really think this. I know they lost in 5, but I'm pulling up. If you can just give me a sec, the Nuggets, game logs throughout the playoffs, and man, this Heat team. I know they lost in 5, but they played the Nuggets really well. They held. Like the Nuggets really didn't explode this playoffs. Like the most they scored against this Heat team was 109. So I guess you're right. They do have something to be happy about, but it's like, man, My biggest takeaway was like throughout the series, kind of staying on this Heat team was this Heat team coming into this finals run was red hot from deep. I don't remember the stats off the top of my head, but Kate, remember it was like this Heat team was shooting like 39% from deep. They were like the 27th ranked team from behind the arc in the regular season, and they jumped from first heading into this playoffs. And then just going through this 3-game stretch. Game 3 at home, 31% from three. Strus puts up 3 points, Vincent 7 points. Game 4 at home, back against the wall. Strus 0 points, Vincent 2 points. Game 5, they shot 25% from three, and they came so close to this taking down this Nuggets team, losing by what it was like 6 points, but it was a 1-point game all the way till the end. Let me pull up this box score real quick. Yeah. Strus had an all right game, but Gabe Vincent completely disappeared. He finally got less minutes, 22 minutes. Caleb Martin logging some more minutes tonight. But my biggest takeaway, Cade, the stars are going to show up for the most part, unless your name's Joel Embiid or James Harden. But for the most part, the stars are going to show up, and it's going to come down to the role players. The Miami Heat role players, no-showed too many times this series. I'll get to Jimmy Butler in a second. Don't worry, Jimmy deserves. There's lots to break down here, but shout out to Bruce Brown, who. Okay, do you remember where he started his career? I want to say I don't think it was in Brooklyn, right?
Oh,
Do you think if you could fact check me real quick?
Yeah.
But when he was on Brooklyn, this dude he was like almost a point forward for them. Kind of like crashing the boards, shooting threes. Denver signs into a 1-year deal. And this guy is so good. Like he's so impactful that he has to close out the fourth quarter. MPJ, who was having a great game but a poor series, kind of a little bit of a defensive liability. And Mike Malone, shout out to Mike Malone, deciding to go with Bruce Brown at the end right there. I know I'm getting off Miami, sorry, Kate, but Bruce Brown, he pretty much won the finals for them with on that putback layup or put back. It was a putback layup. I'm pretty sure. I have it up right here. They are down. Yeah, they're down 1 point. Jamal misses a jump shot, and then Bruce Brown puts them up 2. And then a couple possessions later, he ices the game with 2 free throws. Shout out to Bruce Brown, who's had a kind of a crazy journey, but not the best shooter, but he's one of those hustle players that you just want on your team off the bench. We saw this Denver team just their bench kind of just shine. We saw Christian Braun game, a veteran, in college, and that experience kind of just translated. Moment wasn't too big for him, and I think it was game 3. And then Aaron Gordon, didn't really work out, but as a number 3, he worked out well. He had 27 points game 4, and now it was Bruce Brown coming up big for them. Okay, did Bruce Brown start off with Brooklyn though? I don't think he did, right?
No, he started off with Detroit, then he went over to Brooklyn.
You're right, yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, this dude's been around the league, just hustle player. Kind of, he's not like he's never going to be like the 3rd, 4th best player, but he's just one of those role players you want. I think he's going to get paid nicely this offseason. But that was my biggest takeaway. Just Jokic did his thing. Jamal did his thing for the most part. But it was the role players that really made the Denver Nuggets and broke the Heat because, their role players just didn't show up.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the big things that we've emphasized this entire season, especially as the playoffs came around, was the ability to have a deep bench, the ability to have a bench that was able to be consistent game in and game out. And Denver kind of broke that standard because they only really came off with 3 players off the bench this entire postseason. Today being the only real exception is DeAndre Jordan got 3 minutes, but I mean, you can pretty much count those as 3 non-existent minutes for that team. But it's exactly what you're saying is that this team, they had incredibly big role players, whether they were on the court as starters or coming off that bench as Bruce Brown, Christian Braun. It's the biggest thing that I think is a really strange part to me is that this isn't a group of 3 bench players that I think a lot of people were expecting to come off the bench and make a big effort or make a big emphasis by the time the postseason came around or even during the regular season. I mean, maybe that just be the storylines we saw surrounding Jokic and Murray and how good of a duo that's been this entire season. Maybe it's the fact that this team has been so heavily reliant on their starters. but still, I mean, this is a bench and a group of role players that made the difference in this series. I mean, they showed up in the games that they were necessary for. They played good basketball. And I mean, even though there were some close games in there, they still were able to go out there, prove that they were going to be the best bench they were, despite the fact that they were only going off 3-man bench, knowing that players, whether it's starters or bench players, were going to get a lot more minutes than what we consistently see for most NBA teams, since they have a lot more, they put a lot more emphasis in going deep into their bench. But I'll even say this too. That's one of the biggest takeaways from this NBA Finals for me, is that it's also just the fact that the Denver Nuggets were able to win this series, but they were able to win. They were able to stay as energetic as possible. They weren't getting gassed. They weren't really putting up those games where you saw this team get tired. And I said, one thing that I said going into the series is that Denver having a 9-day break might hurt them a lot more, since it feels like teams that have those longer hiatuses tend to not do too great. And that was definitely not the case. They got the rest they needed, especially because, again, their minutes were so much higher, I feel like, since they were only going off a 3-person bench. But so, I mean, it's crazy to see how well this Denver team played in the in this NBA Finals series. I mean, when we were talking about Denver sweeping the Lakers and Miami possibly having the opportunity to sweep the Celtics, it really did feel like at that moment that this was the better team to match up against the Denver Nuggets. You look at Bam Adebayo, you thought that he'd be a better matchup than somebody like Al Horford against Jokic. You look at Jimmy Butler, who's actually going to be a little bit more of a defensive pest in regards to somebody like Jamal Murray. And no disrespect to Boston's defense. They've shown year in, year out they have one of the top defenses in the league. But for a team like Denver that has the height, that has the length, it really did feel like this matchup against Miami was going to be the one that was going to be a little more difficult and a little more challenging for this Denver team. But they went out there and showed that they could do it in 5. They could go out there. They killed this Miami team realistically, gentleman sweep, and they did it just what felt like so easily, with the, again, only loss coming in game 2 in Denver, which came as a surprise because Miami still did something that no other team this postseason was able to do, and that was win a game in Denver. But that doesn't change the fact that then Denver recollected, recollected 1-2 in Miami. And according to the people of Denver, they were looking for that series to go 5 games because they wanted to be celebrating at home at Ball Arena in Colorado. And that's exactly what they were able to do. So, yeah, I think just my biggest takeaway, kind of bouncing off you, is the fact that this was only an 8-man team this entire postseason, and they were able to make that work, knowing that they were going to get a lot more time, they're going to get a lot more minutes on the court, and they're going to have to do it with a lot less personnel if any of those players were to get injured.
Someone else I think we got to talk about, Cade, Nikola Jokic. I don't know if you want to start with him or Jimmy, the 2 stars, but Jokic 28, 16, and 4 closeout game. I'll pull up the series stats on this dude. It's pretty crazy. 30 points per game, 14 rebounds, 7 assists. I think, I mean, it's safe to say this was an all-time performance for someone who kind of cemented himself as, I think, the best player in the league. I mean, I know defensively he's not really there, but he bangs. He tries hard on defense. He really can't move that well, but I think it's safe to say it's pretty easily that he's the best player in the league. This was an all-time performance. That Miami defense, if they were giving him the zone, he was able to kick it out to players. Some of those guys, MPJ, couldn't hit anything for his life first 4 games. I think those assist numbers would have been inflated for sure. But Jokic, he was just doing what the defense was giving him. He was catching those passes in the middle of that zone at top of the key. His touch is just like no one else. It's like, I don't know who to even compare it to. Maybe like a Tim Duncan touch, where it's like, it's so graceful, and it's like, if it's not a swish through the net, that ball's gonna find its way through the net. All-time performance from Jokic. I saw some stat before game 5 where Jokic and Jamal were averaging like 25, 7, and 7. Jamal's stats dropped because he had a poor game 5, I believe. But these 2 guys were like this is like the only time, or something crazy, like where it's like this is the only time where 2 players average these kind of numbers. So Jokic just on another level. I mean, this dude, I don't see how the Nuggets can't do it again, really, Cade. I mean, this guy's playing the best basketball that I've seen it. And I'm sorry for downing him, but yeah, Cade, I'm sorry.
Hey, real quick, we gotta highlight this real quick. Austin hopping in from overseas. Uh,
Oh, what's up, Austin? 8 a.m.
Geez, I was say they get it on early, but hey, my guess is that he probably didn't watch too much of the series, but still, I mean, figuring it out 8 a.m. in the morning that the Nuggets won the NBA Finals, fun stuff out there. Austin, hope you're having a fun time out in Europe. But yeah, I mean,
You've been on a
Jokic, best.
crazy world tour.
Oh yeah, exactly. I mean, hey,
Yeah.
he's gonna be on. He's on a similar world tour that Jokic is about to be on when he gets over to Europe again. Gonna go see his horses. But yeah, I think. What was that last point you hopped on, Danny? Real quick.
I mean, this is just all-time performance from Jokic. I mean, I don't know what else to say. I mean, he gave what the defense gave him. He was passing the ball. He didn't score the ball as much as people thought he was going to this series, but I mean, you can't nothing else to say really.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, exactly. I mean, I think we emphasize this, or at least I feel like I emphasized this very early on in the NBA Finals, especially after the second round when the Nuggets play the Suns. When Jokic scores a lot of points, this Denver Nuggets team loses. He recognizes, and this team recognizes that if the offense is strictly going through Nikola Jokic, the other players on this team are being limited and shut down, and that's what results in this team losing. You mentioned that. I mean, you go to the Western Conference Finals and the NBA Finals. Jokic wasn't that top scorer consistently. He put up big numbers, but he was never putting up big points. And that was the difference maker in this series, I think, because again, the offense never really had to run through Jokic on this offensive, or when it comes to him scoring points. He was able to do it in other ways, like getting assists, like getting rebounds. And the 3 postseason games that Jokic has scored over 40 points this postseason, they're 0-3. It's very obvious that Jokic doesn't need to be. If Jokic isn't scoring, this team is winning, and it shows here. I mean, it was only a 5-point win tonight, 94-89. Wasn't a high scoring game. Wasn't anything big. But this entire series, it wasn't really high scoring at all. I think the highest point total was somewhere around 108, something like that. I'll have to double check that real quick. But it wasn't a high scoring series at all. Denver played good basketball when it counted. Jokic played the best basketball. I mean, making sure that he kept his teammates open for offensive assists. And that's all it really came down to, is the ability to play solid defense, which we kind of expected, knowing that this Denver team is a much bigger team than a lot of the other teams Miami has faced, a lot of other, just in general as well, with defenders like Aaron Gordon and, oh my God, who else? KCP, Jokic obviously being a big-time defender there. God, who am I?
MPJ
Jamal.
6'10".
Yeah, MPJ. Yeah, exactly. There we go. MPJ, another big time defender. I think I may have had him as my X factor. I could be wrong there, but yeah, it shows that. I mean, this team was just overall a very underratedly built defensive team. Jokic, yes, I agree. He didn't really necessarily get it done too much on the defensive side, but for him, I mean, his offense was so spectacular that his defense didn't necessarily need to be there consistently in order to make this team win. And that's just the biggest factor I see in this as well, is the fact that Denver's defense played such a big role in this, that they were able to go out there, win a series in 5, without having to put up massive. I mean, you look at tonight's game, 94-89, that feels like a game that you'd see in the 90s, where it's not high scoring. Granted, I feel like during the NBA Finals, you do see scoring go down a little more. Those defensive battles really do start to show up. But still, Denver showed that this team's defense was one of the most underrated aspects of this team, and it showed against a team like Miami, who, I mean, they're a defensive-minded team in themselves when you look at it, but they were able to be so hot from 3. They were able to be so hot just on the offensive side through the first round until the Eastern Conference Finals. And other than Game 2, they were shut down completely. And the fact they were shut down completely in Miami says a lot, too. I mean, they lost both games in Miami. It's just, this Denver team is the best team in the NBA. I've said it once, I'll say it again. I told you at the beginning of this series that this is probably going to be the most challenging team that this Miami Heat team is going to see. That was the case. Jimmy Butler had one of the best postseason performances in modern history, at least from what I remember. we mentioned that it seems like it just continues to go on. It hasn't run out yet, and it doesn't look like it's going to run out. It finally hit that brick wall against the Denver Nuggets, and Denver's etched themselves in the history books.
You touched a little bit on Jimmy Butler. Cade, I got to go on my boy Jimmy. Before this series started, 28 points per game, 35% from deep, 9 free throw attempts per game. That's key to me. Basketball Reference hasn't updated Game 5 yet, but through the first 4 games, only 5 free throw attempts per game, drops from 9 to 5, 21.8 points per game. That's probably about the same. Yeah, 21 in Game 5, 5 for 8 in Game 5. If we're gonna play the blame game, I think you gotta give a good chunk of the blame to Jimmy. You're the best player on this team. You lose 2 games at home. You're guaranteeing wins every single game for whatever reason. He never scored over 28 points in a game this finals, and I don't know, when I'm watching Game 5, it looked like he was getting the matchup that he wanted every time. Jamal was guarding him every time. They wanted that down low, and I mean, when is he going to develop a 3-point game? I know he's a great number one, but if they're going under on every single screen, it's like, Jimmy, you just got to work on your 3, right, Kate? I mean, we saw at the end, too late, too soon, or too soon to be too late, whatever the saying is. 13 straight points. He kind of carried them at the end right there. He had those 2 threes and those 3 free throws to actually give them the lead. And then, oh man, what a terrible last shot, Kate. Did you see that last shot?
I didn't know.
24 seconds left on the clock. They're trying to run a play for Duncan Robinson. It looked like it didn't really break down. He didn't get a good look. And then so he gives it back to Jimmy, and Jimmy just chucks up a fadeaway 3. They're like down. I think they were down 3, and 24 seconds left on the shot, or there's like 15 seconds left on the shot clock. Chucks up a 3. It like goes off the backboard. It's like he almost gave up at the end. So for a great defensive game plan that Miami had, like I said, they even though they got blown out, gentlemen swept. They held Denver to under 109, 110 points throughout the entire series. Denver really never had an offensive explosion, so they kind of held it down defensively, and they just never got that Jimmy Butler game, or those 2 Jimmy Butler games where he erupts for 40 points, takes 27 shots and makes 18 of them. So I gotta say I'm disappointed in Jimmy. If I'm playing the blame game, I'm gonna give like 25 to 50% to Jimmy. That sounds like a lot. I'm gonna clump up like 33% to the role players, just because the role players, these are undrafted guys. They did play terrible, and then I got to give some of the blame to Bam, I guess. I don't know, but what's your thoughts on Jimmy, Cade?
I mean, you saw it last year in the Eastern Conference Finals, and Jimmy had a wide open 3 to pretty much give Miami the series. Missed that. This Miami Heat team is so built along the idea that these role players are going to be able to hit that 3-point shooting, that Jimmy Butler's 3-point shooting isn't necessarily going to be a requirement for him to go into every game and be able to shoot lights out from the 3. And I think that's what it came down to, is that because these role players were not playing at the same level they had been in the Eastern Conference Finals and the previous postseason series that they've played, that played a massive role in the ability to actually get their offense going. And it showed this postseason. I mean, again, 111 was the most points scored by a team this NBA Finals, and that was Miami in Game 2 over Denver. That was the only one they won it by 3 points. And as you mentioned, I agree. Denver never got that offensive explosion that was necessary for them to succeed, or at least from what we would think to succeed. But Denver's defense played good enough basketball that they were able to eliminate the role players that were involved, and really keep the only scoring happening between Jimmy and Bam. But those 2 were pretty much out of it. I mean, they didn't really play the way they were expected to play at the beginning of this series, the way they played in the entire postseason.
And then Bam in the first half, 18 points, 8 for 13 from the field, finishes with 20 points. He scored 2 points the second half. He goes 1 for 7 in that second half of Game 5. Man, I'm still not over it, Cade. Man, Miami was so close.
I mean, today they had no excuse. I mean, they led almost the entire game. They gave up the lead late in the game, which was something that we've seen before this Denver team do, where they will be giving up a lead late into a game, especially at home, and they'll find a way to come back and win it. Yeah, I mean, Miami, they've got something. I think this is now. You look at this Miami team. They made it to the NBA Finals. That's fantastic. But I think this is now a point where if you're Miami, you do start looking in a different direction this offseason because you've seen that this team can make it to an NBA Finals with the talent they have, but they've never had the opportunity to get over the hump. Yeah, this is I think this is going to be an interesting offseason for Miami, and I think they're going to start making some decent changes to that team. Not a complete rebuild. I think they're going to keep some role players, some key players there, but I do see this being the beginning of some form of reconstruction of this team in order to get them over the hump and winning an NBA Finals in
And
the
I
near
know,
future.
yeah, I know Dame is in a lot of trade talks right now,
Hmm.
and they have some pieces. Tyler Hero is a solid piece. Surprised we didn't see him out there. Maybe that's because they didn't want to hurt his trade value. A little conspiracy theory, but Dame is in there. Miami's going to continue to find these guys and develop these, undrafted guys, these throwaway guys who, just, know their roles. Gabe Vincent, Max Strus, Highsmith, we didn't see too much of him, but, he's been solid for them. And I think they need a big. That's another big thing. Bam, he's only 6'9", and we saw him do his thing against Jokic. On the offensive side, he was able to, get downhill and get to the rim because he's so much faster than Jokic, but he's not as big body as him. And Kevin Love, he's old. He was getting schooled. He could barely play out there. And then Cody Zeller, are you kidding? That's your backup center. So there's definitely, it was a joke to see him out there. So there's definitely ways they can improve. Maybe just another playmaker like Dame, someone like that, and then another big. I don't think it's really that hard to see where they need to improve on.
Yeah, exactly. I think I'll go far enough to say, looking at the entirety of the NBA offseason, I think the big man is going to be the biggest key for almost the majority of the teams out there. I know a lot of
Ooh,
point guards have been in the discussion. A lot of guards have been smaller guys been in the discussion when it comes to free agents and also people on the trading block, as you mentioned with Dame. But I think centers are going to. I mean, people are going to be so focused on the big guy or on the guards that the centers are going to be the ones that are going to be making the biggest moves. I really do think that centers are going to be the biggest difference for a lot of these teams who are looking to really improve this offseason, Miami being one of them. So that's my takeaway from that. But yeah, I agree. I think they need to look at the center, just a backup to Adebayo, because I mean, Bam, he's a great player, and he does lack the height and it's realistically just the height that a lot of centers have. But he's still such a physical player. I mean, you saw that down the stretch in Game 5. I mean, he was finding people left and right, trying to get the ball. He's a very physical center. He's just a smaller center. They need somebody to kind of counteract that. Somebody who's bigger, somebody who's going to have a little bit more power when it comes to height off the bench. And
and
that
Bam
might be a
can't really
big
stretch
difference
the
maker.
floor as well. That's something else
Exactly.
too.
Yeah, he can't stretch the floor. I agree with that. Um, yeah, I think that's the biggest thing to address. I mean, if you can get Dame in a trade, uh, I don't know how it's really going to work out in Miami. I don't see that being big a big difference maker in my opinion, especially with Kyle Lowry off the bench still. Um, I would like to. I mean, it'd be interesting to see where that goes, but I just don't see that really being a good fit for Dame at the moment. Um, but we can save that for another show. We can talk about Dame trade rumors in the future. Uh, I think, yeah, Miami, they have one of the top coaches in the NBA. They have some star players. I think they just need to have that little more help off the bench. Um, and just a little bit more of a consistent role player. I mean, nothing wrong with Caleb Martin, nothing wrong with Gabe Vincent or Strauss or even Duncan Robinson, unless it's within 3 minutes in a
Maybe just
pivotal
someone
game.
more
I mean,
established too.
exactly. Yeah, established. Exactly. That's the thing is that, and I think they can go out there and get that. I mean, shoot, who knows? They might be able to get Bruce Brown away from Denver and give him a big paycheck. So, I agree. They need to do something a little bit more established. They need to find a way to Just again, get some role players that have again just should get them a role player that's actually going to be a little bit more consistent than a few of these guys out there. I think this is a team that relies so heavily on the ability for their players to be consistent in order to win these series. And it showed this postseason in the finals. It showed throughout the entire. It showed in the Western Conference, or my bad, Eastern Conference Finals. All of that. But Danny, for you, let's hop over to Denver real quick. What do you think is next for Denver? I mean, you mentioned that there's a chance that they're primed to possibly go back to back. I think I'll say it this plain and simple. They need to make upgrades in order to stay contenders, because I think the West is going to be one of those conference. I mean, if the West was strong this year, there's going to be, a little more separation than there was than this year. I think you're going to have you're going to see a little bit more similar to the East. That's more so what I'm trying to get at. I think you're going to have 3 teams that are going to be a lot more dominant this season, this upcoming season. The rest are going to kind of be nobodies. And in order for Denver to be part of one of those 3 teams, they're going to still have to make improvements. Thankfully, they won't. I don't think they'll have to make much. The only thing I can really see as a big concern is just trying to find a little more depth that by the time you get to the postseason, the bench is going to be able to help you a little more it'll help you out a little more than what you saw out of the 3 guys that consistently came off the bench for the Nuggets team. That's all I'll say.
Clip this now. I'll say, before I throw, I think me saying Denver was gonna repeat was me kind of just overreacting a little bit. Because hold on, that was me praising Jokic a little bit too much. Before I slandered Denver, I got to shout out my boy Jamal, who has coming off an ACL injury. I've been showing him love. You've been showing him love on this show. How we've been saying notes 0-time All-Star, but this dude always performs in the playoffs, averaging 20 points per game in the regular season, 26 per game throughout the postseason. In the finals, let me pull that up real quick. I don't have his final stats, sorry, but we saw him take over games, hit big shots late in games throughout these finals. Well deserved. I think it's safe to say easily, for my money, top 3 shooting guard in the league. I mean, this is the perfect number 2. He can facilitate. He can hit the 3 ball. He's just one of the guys that steps up in the playoffs. But unfortunately for Jamal, I clip this now, Katie. Nuggets are not coming back to the finals. I'm sorry. They're not doing it. They're not coming back to the finals. This is their peak. I think they're one and done. And let me tell you why. Unless they improve, because their bench is getting older. Jeff Green off the bench. They're probably going to lose Brown. I know he had one good game, but I don't know if he's going to be able to, take that step as going for 15 minutes off the bench to, they're going to need him to play 23 to 25 minutes per game. The Clippers were injured this year. We'll see if they get healthier. The Suns are going to get better. The Lakers are going to get better. Hopefully, they'll have more time to play with each other at least. The Kings are getting more experience. I'm scared for this Nuggets team. I know Jokic is the best player in the NBA, so I'm not going to completely doubt him out. But I think the West is going to get more healthier this year compared to, this playoffs where Chris Paul got hurt for you guys and the Suns. KD got traded halfway through the season. Now they're going to have a full off season to kind of retool. We'll see what teams do in the draft as well. I wouldn't be surprised if the Warriors make a move, trading either Clay, Jordan Poole, one of those guys. Dame is going to be on the move. He probably is not going to get traded in the West, but you never know. So you can clip this now, Kay. Denver's not coming back.
I agree. I don't think Denver's going to get there. And I think the biggest thing with Denver, and I mean, this is just the NBA in general, you don't see a lot of repeat champions. At least recently you have, and it's always been somebody new.
I guess this would be a good question. Is this Denver team going to be a dynasty?
Ooh. I think they have the potential to be a dynasty. Are they going to be a dynasty? I don't think so. I think this team has a lot of resemblance to a team like the Milwaukee Bucks that really could have a good core of players, but I think they're going to fall short in the playoffs more consistently. I mean, if this was a team that really shows that they could be a dynasty, I think You look at a team like Denver last year, who was the 6th seed and they got bounced by the Warriors in the first round. I think you'd see a little bit more of a fight there because those are a very similar team. I think you go back a year before that when they got bounced by the Suns in the second round. They put up a little bit more of a fight than getting swept in, again, the second round. So I think this is a very good team. I think this is a team that can continue to show play improvement and continue to show a lot of very good things in the upcoming years. But I would not call this team a dynasty. I think they would have to make some significant changes. They'd first off have to find a way to keep a core of MPJ, Jamal Murray, and Jokic. And then you'd have to continue to build around that consistently to keep yourselves in the playoff contention. Or not playoff contention, finals contention. And that's just something I don't think the Denver Nuggets are going to do. I think they're going to really soak this up, and I think they're going to honestly have a very similar roster to what we saw this year going into the next season. And I think that's going to be the difference maker in the way that they play the entire season next year and in the postseason. I don't see them, way too early. I don't see them getting past the second round next year.
Ooh, I don't know about that, Cade.
I'll say I like the Nuggets, but I just think they're going to be sitting on this a little bit too much, which makes sense. You just won an NBA Finals. Why make major changes when you don't have to? You're sitting on the mountaintop. But I do think next year is going to be a little bit more of a wake-up call, with them knowing that they won the NBA Finals this year. They're going to recognize that in order to say a successful franchise in the NBA, you're going to have to continue to make upgrades no matter what. And I think that's what you're going to see the Denver Nuggets do. Maybe not this upcoming season, but you're going to see it happen. And but I do think as long as you can keep that core of MPJ, Jamal Murray, and Jokic, the idea of a dynasty isn't necessarily something that can be ruled out.
I really, I'm not going to call them a dynasty as well. I think that the West is going to be too talented, but I really like your comparison of like the Bucks, where they're just going to have a solid core, a good roster. We said this all year, the entire year, pretty much. We said this on the show. They've had the best roster in the league. Best starting five. The most well-rounded, well-built starting five in the NBA. So, they'll always be, top 3 seed, next couple years from now, as long as they keep that core. But yeah, like you said, I don't think they're going to be a dynasty as well. Just because I think the West is just too talented. And I think it's going to get stronger.
Oh, now it's too talented. It wasn't too talented last week, but it's too talented now.
All right, yeah, it's gonna get too talented. Yeah,
okay, it's gonna get too talented. Okay,
I just went through why.
Yeah,
the Clippers are getting healthy. The Lakers are I just already said that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I was just giving you a hard time from last week. I agree. I think it's definitely going to be. I thought it was incredibly talented this year. I think it's going to get more talented as long as players can stay healthy, and as long
I still think the chip is a little overrated. Just a little bit.
I don't know about that. We'll see.
Miami Heat as an 8 seed. Come on, they got blessed.
Hey, you were hyping them up last week before they got gentleman sweep by the Nuggets. So
I'm sorry, Strus averaged 0 points per game.
Hey, I'm sorry too. That's the difference maker between getting gentleman sweep and maybe 1-6.
Yeah, probably.
So, but who knows? But yeah, I agree.
Hey, kid, my laptop's about to die, so let me run and get my charger real quick.
I was gonna say, honestly, I only got one more thing to take before I'm done. But okay. Or at least I just got one more point, and then I think I'm ready to wrap it up. But yeah, the one thing I'll say is that I agree. I think if the West stays healthy, the West is going to continue to be the best conference in the NBA. It's going to be a rubber match between so many different teams. It's going to be a lot of fun. So I do think the Nuggets need to take a step in the direction of trying to figure out what they can do to continue to build off their role players. But again, like I said, I think it's just so hard to say that the Nuggets are going to do that right now. They're going to have that championship hangover so hard because they know as long as they keep their core, they're going to stay possible contenders throughout their entire time with that core. So that's what I got. I just think next year is going to be a little bit of off year. After that, I think the Nuggets are going to continue to push themselves into a position where they're actually talked about in the NBA championship contention much more consistently.
All right, fair enough. I don't know if my boy Jamal's gonna let them get bounced in the second round like that. We'll see.
Hey, I mean, I'm all I'm saying is that championship hangover,
Is
it
real.
hits. Oh yeah, exactly, it hits. So, no, it's not no disrespect to the talent on that team. I just think there's going to be a team next year that hasn't won it in a while, and they're going to want it a little more. So that's all I'll say about that. And that's the only reason I have them going out in the second round. Not again, no disrespect to the talent on that team though. Danny, you got
All
anything
right,
else though?
I'm gonna pull up next year's championship odds. Who do you think is favored?
Uh, I'm saying Bucks or Suns, just because Suns are making a lot of waves. Bucks were the best team in basketball this season, or during the regular season.
It's actually the Nuggets and the Bucks.
Oh, okay. So Bucks, right? I'm surprised it's the Nuggets though. But I think that's
Yeah,
something you always see though. Every time a team wins a championship, they're always the favorites going into next year. It's the safe option.
probably. Yeah. All right,
At least
my
that's
laptop's
what
about
I've
to
seen.
die. That's all I got,
Okay.
Cade.
All right, that's all I got as well. The Nuggets are NBA champions, but once again, we thank you guys for tuning into the show. We'll be back shortly with some off-season talk, NBA draft coming up. It's going to be some good stuff still coming out of our boat. But hey, that's a fantastic NBA season. We're happy to have been with it for the entire NBA season for the first time in the show's history. And we're excited for when October comes around again to make it happen for the start of next NBA season as well. Thank you for joining us tonight. We hope you have a great night. We hope you have a great week. We'll see y'all next time.